You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 90. Today I'll be talking to Sean 9 Lugo. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairdspodcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram at Art Affairs Podcast. Alright, so today's guest is artist Sean 9 Lugo. Sean is a regular in the tight-knit Philly art community, and I believe friend to both Jeremy Hush and Caitlin McCormack, who have both been on the show previously and are also Philly community members. But Sean hasn't always been a part of the Philly community. He actually grew up just outside of Manhattan. We talk about his time growing up in the streets of New Jersey, as well as how he got into graffiti and started making street art, the meaning behind his teddy bear head motif, and the story that it's telling about him, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Sean 9 Lugo. Sean, welcome to the show, man. It's so good to have you on.
Oh, it's a huge pleasure, man. I've been a big fan for a long time.
Awesome. And shout out to Jess from Blood Milk, who was actually a friend of mine, but another active member of the Philly community, and the one that suggested that I reach out and have you on.
Oh man, that's awesome. Jess is great. I'm actually in the process of working on her portrait.
Oh, nice.
Which is scary for me because she's such a talent, and as an artist trying to create a portrait of someone, I don't know, it always feels funny, because you're having your peers judge you. But I'm extremely excited about it.
Yeah, and also you're capturing the person's essence. So it's like no pressure.
Yeah, none at all.
Cool. So let's dive into your background a little bit. And I know that you grew up in Hudson County, New Jersey, which I don't know much about that area of the country, but looking at Google Maps and researching a bit, it's the most densely populated county in the state, despite it being the smallest. But what part of it did you grow up in?
So I grew up probably 2 minutes from the Lincoln Tunnel, and the town is Weehawken. So I was on the border of Weehawken, Union City. I grew up on a street called Maple, and it's full of brown. My mother came from Cuba, and she landed in the Bronx as a teenager, and then from there she moved to the Union City area. And it's pretty much all Cuban, Dominican,
okay, a
lot of Caribbeans, now a lot of Colombians and stuff like that. But you have that melting pot of all these Spanish cultures, and it's amazing. I have many mothers of all different ethnicities, and it's great, man. It's a great place to grow up. It is a little crazy as you get older. I couldn't do it no more. I had to move away because of how populated it is. It could take you 20 minutes to go 5 blocks, or trying to go through the Lincoln Tunnel that's right there could take you an hour, and
wow,
and you lose your shit. So I'll rather not live there anymore.
Being that close to the Lincoln Tunnel, Manhattan, and the big city, did you spend much time there growing up?
Oh yeah, all the time. I remember the old Port Authority.
Okay.
A scary place for someone who's 9 years old. But yeah, it was good times. It taught me a lot. It kind of brought my first love of graffiti. That's kind of where my art addiction came from. Going into New York, going to Met games with my dad. Sorry, I'm a Mets fan. And riding the 7 train, and you just see all those graffiti pieces on the rooftops and passing by 5 Points, and it was very inspiring. And it was my first love for sure was graffiti, and I fell in love with that culture, and that kind of opened my eyes to art. If it wasn't for graffiti, who knows? But I always used to draw comics and stuff as a kid. Comics was a huge influence, but graffiti was that thing that made me want to do things in the street.
Okay. Yeah, and I had read that you were big into comics, so I kind of wondered which of the two, like which is that maybe what got you inspired to create art, or was it some combination of those things?
I think it was the combination of both. The street culture itself. Um, it was great to just, as a kid, this sounds wild. I said this a couple times, but my curfew as a minor was midnight. And the neighborhood we grew up in, all the moms looked out after us. There would always be a mom out the window making sure we were there. They'll yell at us when we needed to go home. We used to use the Empire State Building as our beacon. The light used to shut off prior to 9/11 at midnight. Now it stays on all the time. But that was kind of that was kind of our little run home. So just the concept of doing something illegal, I guess, as a young boy, is always tempting, right? And kind of, I would say graffiti more so comic books. I think comic books led to my illustration approach
Mm.
because I wasn't really that great at making letters. So I think I leaned more towards illustrations.
Okay, interesting. One thing that you just said that I kind of want to go back to is the way that it seemed like you were raised by the community. And I feel like that's such an interesting, I've never experienced that. I've always lived in the suburbs of whatever city that I'm in. And there's not that. You don't have that kind of connection with the community as much. Everybody is kind of in their own little bubble individually. But it seemed like you were raised literally by the people around you as sort of the fabric of community, building up, all the people that was supporting it. So like, I guess, did that have a lasting impact on you in some way? I mean, it may be hard to say, like articulate what that would even be because you didn't know anything different, but I'm kind of wondering if maybe that has been ingrained in you, that sense of community.
100%. I'm very blessed to grow up where I grew up. There's not that many people who could say they have like 9 brothers from the age of 5, and I'm 42, and I still have all those close friends except one because he passed away. But yeah, it's beautiful. I called every friend's mom. They called me son. As soon as I walked into their house, they were like, "Hijo, you want something to eat?" And it was like, "Yeah, please." So it's even to this day, nothing's changed. I don't know if it's a Hispanic thing or it's just where we grew up, but we had friends who weren't Hispanic. They were Italian or Irish, and same thing. It was an awesome community to grow up in. Everyone had love for each other. Everyone looked out for each other, and even to this day, it's still the same. We're kind of like a band of delinquent brothers who have some wild stories.
No, that's awesome. And you mentioned your mom being from Cuba. What kind of work did your parents do? Is it any artistic endeavors or?
Not really. My mom was a cleaning woman. Uh, my father did a little doodling here and there, but nothing to write home about. He he wasn't around. Uh, I would say, I don't know. It's just my theory, I guess. But I guess when I needed a father figure in my life, he was incarcerated. So um, I didn't really have that inspiration or you know those times to sit down and draw with a father or maybe learn something from him. So I wasn't fortunate to have any of that.
Do you feel like in the absence of that, that there were other things that served in its place? Like other things that kind of gave you that inspiration since you didn't have that opportunity to spend that time with your father?
Yeah, I think it made me the savage I am. I think I think it made me realize at a really young age that you can't take things for granted, and no one's going to give you anything, so you have to work hard for it. So I didn't go to art school or anything like that. I just learned from watching others and really trying my best constantly, and it led me to everything I was able to achieve today. Just constantly putting in that work and hustling, and not stopping, and never being, I guess, shut off at all. Like I can't learn something. Like I'm too good. Like I feel like I could always learn something. Even today, I could learn something. Every day's a learning experience, and I never take any of it for granted.
Oh, for sure. And talking a little bit more about your love of comic books, what were you more into, like superhero books or some of the more dramatic books, like the Vertigo stuff, or like what was the stuff that resonated most with you?
Yeah, it was mostly the illustrations. I guess unfortunately for me, I'm dyslexic. I didn't find out until I was 30, which is hilarious. I just thought I was slow. um, but my mother handed me a piece of paper and she was like, "Oh, I think you could use your old report cards and stuff in your like backgrounds for your artwork." And I said, "Yeah, it's a great idea." And then I was going through the papers. I found out that I was dyslexic. So I really just used comic books for like the photos, the illustrations, the imagery. And I would kind of like tell my own stories. I would try to read it and just, make my own stories out of it and stuff like that, for the most part. But I would say like, Spider-Man and Batman, I don't know what it is, just gravitated to it. The darkness of Batman, the silliness of being bit by a spider and having superpowers. I still hope that happens to me tomorrow. But for the most part, yeah, the illustrations, like Jim Lee was, oh man, dude's a master. And, Todd McFarlane, like those are kind of like my two. If I had an opportunity to buy a comic, I would buy something that they drew.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I think like as far as the commonality between Spider-Man and Batman, I mean the one thing that I always liked about those two in particular is that they were flawed in their they weren't perfect heroes like
Oh,
a Superman
100%.
or whatever. Like they were human, they were regular guys and had the same troubles that we all do, but they had this greater sense of responsibility.
Yeah. As I got older, and I got better at reading, I did fall in love with like Transmetropolitan.
Oh, yeah, nice. Yeah,
That's my favorite graphic novel. I don't
amazing.
know what it is. That story, even till today, if you read it, it like hits. You're just like, wow, it's kind of like what the government's like now. It's the
Yeah,
same.
I went back and read it a couple years ago again. I read it when it first came out, and then I went back a couple years ago and read it. That was like prime Vertigo. Like
Oh yeah,
Preacher
Warren
was
Ellis.
around at the same time, and then Transmet. Yeah, Warren Ellis and what Derek Robertson was the artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So did you want to be a comic artist? Like as somebody, like when somebody asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was the answer comic book artist, or were you thinking of something else?
I had no idea what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I probably said I wanted to be an artist. I can't remember. I still didn't think I wanted to be an artist even in my early 20s. I
Hmm.
just loved making art. I never thought it was something, career wise or solo shows or anything. I just like making art. As for the comic book question, um, I wasn't, or should I say, I'm not good off drawing off the top of my head. I need photo reference. And comic book illustrators, man, the way they know the anatomy is
Yeah.
insane. And I cannot, I cannot figure it out for the life of me. So I need the photo to be able to draw what I see. So that's why I knew that was out the window early. I knew there was no shot I was going to be able to be a comic book illustrator. But I would love to do a cover.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So in addition to your love of comics, you also talked a little bit about your love of street art. How did you get? I mean, that's something that you started doing as a teenager, from what I understand. You started kind of tagging in your neighborhood at the age of 17. How did that all get started for you? What motivated you to go out and paint in the streets?
Um, I would say I was like 15, 16, and me and a couple homies on the block really got into graffiti, and we would go down to Bomb the System, which is now the scrapyard in New York City, and they had like spray cans and markers and all types of that graffiti accessory type stuff needed, and we would make trips out there to get clothes, and we would buy markers and all types of stuff, and then tag in the subways, and then tag in our neighborhoods. And around 98, 99, I think I finally had the courage to try to do spray paint. I was very, very shy young man for many reasons. So I had the courage to do it, and I did it for a couple of years. Like I was saying before, I never was really good at it. I wasn't a toy, but I wasn't a distort or a rhyme. You know, I wasn't one of the elite graph writers that you see today. And I got arrested, and when I got arrested in, I believe, 2001, 2002, somewhere around there, I was just like, screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. You know, I had to pay $1,500. I was
Oh
like,
man.
oh man, this is annoying. And like an idiot, I like shit where I ate. I like did it 5 minutes from my house, right outside the Lincoln Tunnel. I don't know what I was thinking. It was very stupid of me, thinking back on it now. But I still had that itch though, even after that, to do something in the street. But I just knew it wasn't graffiti, you know? My lettering, like, it was trash. So I just wanted to keep doing things in the street. And going into New York was a huge inspiration, especially going into Brooklyn. As I started doing that, getting older, then I would see like Soon's work and WK and Elbow Toe, and those were like my three huge inspirations that made me want to do things in the street that I didn't think was possible. Like I wouldn't think I could draw on a piece of paper and put it on a wall.
Right.
You know, I never thought, I thought everything had to be paint, like you had to paint the wall. So going into the city and seeing a whole bunch of posters, you know, that weren't ads was inspiring. And, and that kind of led me to dabble more in the street art realm. And I think I started at first by stealing street signs and painting them and putting them back up. It was stupid to steal stop signs, but
Hopefully not in your neighborhood this time.
yeah, just there. I would take them down, paint them, and put them up the next day. They all wound up getting taken down within a couple of weeks, but that was where it started. And then I ran around Brooklyn for a while, just gluing these like little pieces of paper up, just to see what glue worked, what should I use. And it wasn't until I almost died in, I think it was 2011. Yeah, August 1st, no, sorry, August 1st, 2012. I
Okay.
almost died in a horrible car accident.
Mm.
And before that, I had this amazing idea for the series that I've been doing, putting animal heads and stuff on people. I realized then after the accident that time is too short. And I really, if I'm going to do this, I have to like dive in. And that's where my push came. You know, my push really started in, 20, 2013. Once I was all healed up, I had a show at a restaurant bar in Jersey City called LITM. I don't think it's around anymore. And, I had a solo show there. It was, very successful. and I was able to display that series. And then the first time I put up a piece of that series, I was with Vince from Spain, and he was putting up something, and I was putting up something, and I was just picking his brain, like not knowing anything about art. I figured every time I had an opportunity to meet anyone, I wanted to just pick their brain. And he saw my work, and for someone who did something similar by adding animal heads, he like praised me,
Oh,
and I
nice.
was like, oh man, like this is cool, you know. I guess I am doing something right. And he kind of motivated me and pushed me and was like, oh man, you got to go big, you know, like don't be doing nothing small, go big, like make a name for yourself. He was like, you're an amazing artist, you know, and that was kind of like the push off the cliff I needed to like really from that moment on just go nuts.
Awesome. And that's very cool to, I mean, it's very validating when people like that kind of make you feel like what you're doing is worth it. And, you know, obviously you think it's worth it, but when you see these people that you maybe look up to or your peers also praising it, you know, it gives you a sense of validation, I guess. We skipped over a lot of things, so I wanted to go back a little bit.
Oh no, sorry.
No worries, no worries. Like, I want to make sure we get the whole story. So, like, back in the early days when you were just starting out doing graffiti, maybe before you discovered, like, when you were still doing spray paint, or maybe even after when you were moving more into wheat paste, did you tag, like, was all of that illegal, I'm assuming? And did you use like a tag name, like a different from your own, so that you weren't as easily recognizable?
No, I wasn't I wasn't great at this whole graffiti game. My tag was literally Seam, so I
Okay.
just got lazy and made the N into an M, and then I wrote that. Um, that didn't, that wasn't, like I said, I wasn't the greatest. And I did dabble with murals. I painted two murals. I just liked it. It wasn't that it was scale or anything like that. I hate to say this, but it was people. it
Mm.
was it was you're up on a ladder and you have headphones on and someone's like shaking the ladder to tell you good job. And it's like, oh, thanks. Or you're using spray paint and they're like, are you using spray paint? And I'm like, no, this is a can of Raid. You know, it was it was annoying at times and it was hard to get into rhythms. And I don't know if obviously everyone experienced that, you know, at one point or another, especially for mural festival and all types of stuff. I can only imagine. But for me, it drove me crazy. You know, I'm a very social person, at times, but when I'm creating, I like being by myself. If that makes sense. Um, I prefer to be like all alone when I'm drawing or painting or anything like that. Like I can't have interruption. So to me, like podcasts are great. You know, listening to books on tape. You know, like any of that stuff is amazing to me because I could just lock in and just focus on just people talking. You know.
So, were your parents knowledgeable about what you were getting up to, or I mean, your mother, was she supportive of you, like as far as just your interest in arts? Maybe not the illegal side of it, but at least like encouraging you as a creative.
Yeah, my mother was a savage, man. Coming from Cuba, she was different, man. I miss her, man. She was great. She was definitely my biggest fan. You know, she pushed me for sure. So even when I was telling her that I would show her photos of the stuff I was putting in the street, she would be like, "Oh, that's cool, Papi. They let you do that?" And I said, "No, it's illegal. You know, it's illegal. They didn't let me do it." And she would be like, "Okay, just don't get caught." You know, it was nothing to her. You know, nothing phased her. You know, she was a wild woman. You know, she was involved in her own craziness. So, um, huge supporter though. Huge supporter. Anytime I did anything, you know, like the back of the day of Facebook, it would make me laugh. I would post painting, and someone would go, "Oh, nice painting," and she would then reply, "Isn't it so nice though?"
Nice.
So adorable.
Yeah, I love that. So like, I guess as you were kind of going out as an adult and making your own way, were you, did you just like jump right into your art practice immediately, or were you doing other kinds of work on the side, as like day jobs to pay the bills while you were figuring out what it meant to be an artist?
Yeah, I still work a day job. Um, I'm a full-time art handler, which is great. I'm literally surrounded by the arts. Um,
Is that what you were from the start? Have you always been that as your day job, or did
no,
you do other kinds
I
of things?
started doing that in 2011
Okay.
at 30. At 30, prior to being 30, I was kind of a piece of shit, you could say. I I did a lot of illegal things in the street. um,
Mm,
we could just say street pharmacist. Yeah, not the best. Uh, Around 27, 28, I started getting my shit a little bit together. Started working jobs here and there, and I would always work. Even when I did that, if my mom had a cleaning business, so she needed something done, like cleaning windows in some high rise in New York City or something, I would do it for a day and get paid like $400. It was crazy. So, so I would always try to make money wherever I could. Construction. I did some wild things. So I just had that hustle in me, to make money, even though I was doing it illegally. I still found ways to make money legally. Always had that hustle drive, just to keep doing.
And in that pre 2011 period, before you kind of had that, I guess, artistic awakening, were you at least still trying? Like, were you still doing some amount of your own work on the side, or was it only after you kind of made that recognition that, oh man, time's short, I need to focus?
Oh man, well, one thing I always tell young artists is you got to show where you can, and I think the first time I showed that I was extremely excited was in 2008.
Okay.
It was like November 2008. I got to show at a bar in Hoboken, which was called Maxwell's. And they had all these like up and coming bands perform there and stuff like that. And as a young person, like that was the place you would go. Um, and they would have art shows with amazing artists. I can't even remember. I know some of them are well known today, but I just can't remember right now on the top of my head. And I got to show there in a group show, and I was like ecstatic. And from there, it made me be like, oh man, I could show my art. So then I would do group shows anywhere I could, and before you knew it, I think I had like eight or nine, probably nine if I look back. Um, uh, like solo shows at bars or restaurants, and and then when your work starts selling, you're like, oh man, like I couldn't make money off of this, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was painting on masonite and found objects in the street. I had no idea if any of this stuff even exists because it's definitely not archival. And I would just paint on anything and experiment. I loved painting animals so much. Just going through books and just trying to recreate images I would see in the dictionary
Yeah.
or National Geographic magazine, and that was kind of what I really focused on, which I think made me a better illustrator. Just drawing animals, drawing animals, drawing animals, because especially the fur
Yeah.
and all those things, it's quite the challenge. So
Sure. And then after you had that accident and sort of a life awakening, that's when you really kind of doubled down and focused more intentionally on your art.
yeah, 100%. The one biggest drive was getting to meet artists from all over the world around that time. I was going to a lot of shows, like Jonathan Levine Gallery. I was going to every opening, and I would like link up every now and then with like Doze Green. He was based out of Jersey City at the time. I would pick his brain when I could. And I was really just trying to learn from everyone and anyone. And then my wife in in 2011 wanted to do murals. We had a site, Savage Habit, together, and she would write about walls. It was the name of my website, but I was like, man, this should be something else. This is a cool name. I'm like, we both love street culture, and you're a great writer. It would be cool to like maybe do a blog. That was the thing at the time, I guess.
Yeah.
So we created that blog together, and I would like help her find stuff, and she winded up really putting me on to so many artists. Dolk, like I got to meet Dolk back in 2012, and he did a mural for us, and it was wild to see what he does now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that guy is a god, and it was so cool to meet him, and like he's like a brother, and everyone being like so supportive. Growing up, the only negative thing I could say growing up in like Hudson County, in the New York area, is it's really hard to collaborate and work with others. There's a lot of me. There's really everyone thinks they can't eat.
Okay.
So it's not as open.
So big egos.
Yes, and you could work with people every now and then you'll try to reach out and work with them again, and then they're just like, nah, man, I'm busy, and you're just like, damn, all right, and it sucks because I did form a lot of amazing relationships with artists, and the moment they started getting some success, it's like they forgot your number, in a sense.
Right.
And then when you hit them up, it was like they kind of seemed like you were trying to get something from them, and we were friends, man, and you had nothing a year ago. You didn't have a show. Now you have a show, and you're too busy. It's like, okay, that's fine, and that happened a lot in
Really?
the New York, New Jersey area, and then being in Philly now. Not to fast forward, but to being in Philly now, oh man, it's so easy. Just to reach out to someone and be like, hey, let's collaborate, and they're just like, oh my god, I'll be honored, and you're just like, wow, okay, where was this energy when I was younger?
And so when did you moved to Philly in what, like 2015-ish, somewhere around there?
I never lived in Philly.
Okay.
I'm considered a Philly artist. It's great. I know. I moved to Delaware, Texas.
Okay.
So I'm only a half hour away from Philly.
So you never lived there. I had no idea. I mean, you often get that moniker of Philly-based artist or whatever. So I just assumed you were there.
Yeah, I love that city. The whole brotherly love thing is not a lie. They welcomed me like I've lived there for 30 something years. Everyone is so loving in Philadelphia. Well, not everyone. Let me take that back. Most of the people are very cool in Philly, and everyone's down to work with you. And that's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. And so what motivated the move out of New Jersey to Delaware, and then also spending a lot of time in Philly?
It was mostly just buying a house. Me and my wife really liked Philadelphia. We would travel there frequently and go to art shows. Probably, I would say like every other month. We started like going to Philly a lot around like 2009. We really started venturing out to Philly more, and then before you knew it, we were probably here like every month, and I just started just coming down here to put up stuff. Like I said, it just, the moment I put up something in Philadelphia, it was wild the response I got.
Yeah.
Which made me go, all right, cool. They fuck with it,
Yeah.
I never thought what would happen, obviously, but it was definitely a great place. And me and my wife were thinking about moving to Philadelphia, buying a house in Jersey is almost impossible. It's like you pay, I don't know, $14,000 in taxes. It's like, man, that's like mortgage, you know? So that wasn't possible. So we thought Philly. And then my wife used to come down here as a kid to Delaware. Her father had a friend who lived here. And she was like, well, you know, Delaware is only like a half hour away from Philly, and it's half the taxes of Pennsylvania. And I said, so Delaware it is. And that was a no brainer. We just took that leap. Like, fuck it, let's just do it. We just had to get jobs down here, and I got a job first at an art handling company, and then my wife soon after followed. You know,
Nice.
and we lived here for like a year until we were able to buy a house, and yeah, man, it was a great. I think it just all worked out. You know, moving prior to COVID, having a home, and all those things. The timing was perfect.
It's awesome. That's very cool. And so let's dive into the work itself a little bit. And you know, you mentioned earlier the motif around animal heads on people, but also in particular stuffed like teddy bear head is a common theme that you work in. And so I kind of wanted to explore that a little bit as to what the origin of that thematic is. When did that start, and what was the kind of meaning behind that?
Yeah, the teddy bear head is a good one. I was when I started working in an art handling company. The first piece that I created from this series was inspired by, I believe his name is Corey Arnold. I saw it in Juxtapoz magazine. He was a fisherman wearing a horse mask, and he was holding a cat. And it was so unique, the photo. And I was like, man, this is silly. And I always had this thing about masks. Um, I really don't like painting people's faces. Not that I can't, but it's just, to me, the moment you see a face, you look at it a different way. You try to read the person's face based on that. You know, like, oh, I don't know this person, or why is this person sad or happy, or you know, whatever the case is. For me, growing up, I was so shy and intimidated by so many things, and it was hard for me to be myself. So I felt like I wore a mask growing up in high school, even coming out of high school. It was so hard for me to be myself. It was only if I was with my brothers that I grew up with, I could openly be myself, like unapologetically myself, and no one, you know, minded. I just felt it was almost impossible for me to do that around people. And from there, I saw the horse head, you know, since it was a mask. I saw the horse head as like, oh man, this would be a cool way to kind of tell my life story in a way, since I've always been, you know, someone who wore a mask. And as I got older, well, the moment I almost died, I threw that mask away and I never put it back on, you know? Um, I'll be shy around people, but the moment it's time to talk, oh, you're going to get some shit. And from there, I did this portrait, and this really good dude I was working with, Mike, you know, I'll always give him a shout out. And he told me, oh, I did something like that with my buddy. And I said, what do you mean you did something like this with your buddy? He was like, yeah, man, it reminds me of something. I gotta show you these photos. I was like, all right, what is it? And he showed me these photos of him wearing this teddy bear head.
Nice.
And I was like, what the fuck is this? This is awesome, bro. Like, this looks crazy. And he was just like, yeah, my ex-girlfriend bought me this like Hallmark kissing bears. And I cut their heads off. And me and my buddy wore them and we're taking photos. And I was like, dude, can you send me these photos? And I was like, what was the name of this? He was like, I don't know. It was like a Hallmark kissing bear. I went on eBay that day, bought it for like $2.67 or something.
Oh wow.
You know, I think shipping was more than the teddy bears were. And the moment I got it, I like cut their heads off.
Mm.
it was immediate. I just I just cut their heads off, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be like the best photo reference ever. Yeah, and then that kind of using them made me think even more and do a deep dive and be like, Polo, the Polo teddy bear. Growing up, I was poor as shit, food stamps, and people would make fun of me because I always had like hand-me-down clothes. And I would always look at these kids wearing polo and with the teddy bear and be like, oh man, I wish I could own one of those shirts, you know? So just thinking back at it was like, oh shit, like I could really like fuck around with this teddy bear head even more, you know?
Yeah. So does the figures, because you don't always use the teddy bear for everything, are the
No.
figures in your work that are the teddy bear, is that meant to be you, or is some like semblance of your personality?
Yeah, majority of the time the teddy bear is me. And if there's a bunch of people wearing the teddy bear, is because they're people close to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the people who have the teddy bear head, if it's portraits of other people, um, it's usually like close friends, that I consider family. Some people, when I want to do a portrait of them, for like a street series that I have in Philly, they'll be like, "Oh, I got to be in a teddy bear head," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool," that could happen.
For the ones that aren't teddy bears, those tend to not be stuffed animal heads, but actually like real animal heads. And so I kind of wonder, like, what is the distinction between when you use a stuffed animal head versus a real animal? Are the animals meant to represent some characteristic of that person's personality, or like what is the other animal heads and their meaning?
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like their spirit animal. You know, I always like picking people's brains. I drew animals for so long, and I feel like we all got a little spirit animal in us. So it's interesting to find out like what people suggest when I say, oh man, what animal head would you like? You know, when I'm just doing paintings for a show or I'm trying to tell a story, then the heads play a different role. If I'm painting bird heads, I kind of look at it, birds, squirrels, cats, dogs, like all things you see in the street.
Right.
So it depends on what I'm trying to tell. Birds, I feel like come and go, and dogs are the beast. When you see a wild dog, you you step away. But cats are the little sneaky critters who are just you know always down for that smoke. And and squirrels, man, squirrels are they're the crackheads of the neighborhood. So I try to use those animals when I'm trying to tell certain stories. But I definitely do want to paint all types of animals more on bodies. Like even if it's like a snake or roosters, and like the opportunities are endless. I kind of pigeonhole myself at times with the teddy bear head, because it's easy. I've done it so much. It's kind of like,
Sure.
oh, let me just throw a head on it. Okay, the teddy bear head,
Right.
you know, and I'll just have my wife take a photo of me, and I'm like, okay, boom, there we go. We'll just draw this real quick.
And so I guess, are there other types of symbols that you use beyond the animal heads that are recurring throughout your body of work? Like I'm looking at some of your work here on the side now. You have some chopping fruit or butterflies flying by. Are there other like common symbols that you will revisit in multiple pieces over time?
Yeah, I definitely try to tell my story growing up. People get inspired by all types of stuff. When I'm putting together a show, to me, it's all about telling a story, and the best story I know is mine. And the people I grew up with. So the butterflies represent like immigration, because the migration of going from one place to the next to the next to the next. I moved 17 times in my life.
Oh, wow.
And for me, from one place to the next, and then I have so many mothers and so many friends, Ecuadorian, Colombian, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, you name it. I have so many different mothers of different cultures, and, you know, all of them are immigrants. I was literally raised by immigrants. So anytime I went to their house, you weren't talking English unless, you know, one of, the Italian friend was over or something. Then they would speak broken English out of respect, but for the most part, I try to use certain animals or like the butterfly instinct, an insect or whatever, to just tell stories, and my stories. So the butterflies was huge, in my show, Immigrant Mentality, a Paradigm, where I try to tell the story the show I dedicated to my mother, who's no longer with us, and tell my story of growing up being raised by immigrants.
Sure. Beyond stories about yourself and your own lived experience, is there an element of social commentary or like political statements? Because a lot of times people that paint in the streets will have some underlying social message also, in addition to stories that they want to tell. Do you like to incorporate those types of things in your work ever?
Not so much. If I get inspired by something, I'll I'll gravitate towards that. I try to stay away from politics or political things. Everyone has a view. Sometimes people are too opinionated, and they don't like opening their eyes and looking at that there's, different parties, right? It's like it should just be one party. We should just all work together. I grew up in a community, so I'm all about community. And if we can't be a community, and if I say, "Oh man, I like his tie," and you're mad because you don't like him, it's like how can we be friends? It's like, this is a community. I should be able to say something I like if you dislike it, and you should understand why I like it and respect that. You should never not want to, like, communicate with me or associate with me because I have a different view or stance. So I try to stay away from those things because they could be triggering to people, especially nowadays.
So let's dive into like your process a little bit, and I wanted to know how do you generally approach ideation or generating of ideas? Do you have any kind of like intentional brainstorming activities that you do, like daily sketch routines or anything like that?
Yeah, my mind is constantly going, man. It's hard to sleep sometimes. In the street, I got to the point that I just didn't want to create any type of image. Doing murals and working with so many artists, you pick and choose things that you like, how they work, and why they do what they do. For me, I feel like wherever I put up something, it's all about placement, but I just don't want to go into a neighborhood I'm not from and put up something that they won't associate with. So that's huge to me, to know where I'm about to, shit, I guess you could say, right? And put something up. I want it to be accepted. So I started being mindful of that. In Philadelphia, I have a clone series where I replicate artists or entertainers or, just powerful people in Philadelphia recreating their portraits. So even if you see it, you can learn something from someone in that city, and it'll help you know more people from the city more. And even if let's say I go out to New Mexico tomorrow, I'm gonna do a lot of research. I'm gonna try to reach out to artists I know who live around there and you know been there and try to get that culture. So what I create, those people will accept it. You know, I don't want to just put up things just to put them up for fun. I like telling jokes and tackling subjects. Homeless is something um, that's that I try to tackle from time to time, to like more like homeless awareness. So I have a series that I just painted a whole bunch of pieces recently, and it's just people holding signs. They're funny signs, but it's just to give the awareness of like, this is all around you, you know,
Yeah.
and you don't do nothing about it except complain, type thing.
And that's a form of social commentary. I mean, earlier you said you don't really dive into social.
Yeah.
That's sort of social commentary. I mean, it's not political, but it's social.
You're right. Yeah.
And so I guess I like what you said about wanting to make the work that you put up in the streets meaningful to that community, so that the community connects with it and welcomes it as a telling of their story. How do you approach that research? You said you kind of talked to some of the artists in the area. Is that your main conduit to getting to know that community?
Yeah, big time. Working with others, picking their brain, having conversations like this, getting to know people, what got them into art, all types of things. And then, who inspires you, in Philadelphia, Christina Martinez, famous chef, immigrant, from Mexico. Her story's inspiring, to be able to sit down and talk to her and be able to create her portrait was very meaningful. You know, I feel like conversation is so powerful, and to be able to have all the conversations I had, I'm very blessed. You know, um, I don't like I keep not to beat a dead horse, but I'm very grateful for everything that I've had in my life and my experiences and the people I've got to know. It's wild to me. I don't believe it sometimes. It's like I got to pinch myself moments, but it's great. To always get out of my comfort zone as well, because there's so many different styles of art. There's crochet artists who do things in the street. There's people who just take photos and post it in the street, and so to try to work with so many different styles and have conversations like, I want to create your portrait, but you're an artist, so you have to, we have to collaborate on something and make this work, and to let all egos aside and come together and create art is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, awesome. And so while you're working in the studio and you've done the research, you kind of have an idea of what you want to move forward with as far as the story that you want to tell. How do you then develop the composition for that piece? Do you do just more and more refined like sketches and drawings, or like how do you work out how you want to arrange the different components of the work?
Yeah, I'll start with a mock-up. So since I work off photo reference, I'll take a whole bunch of photos, see what works based on size. A lot of the things that I glue my work in the street on is like a window. So it's like bodies waist up, or if it is from um, people standing, they're like in motion or they're doing something. So it's kind of like, okay, how can I fit this? Where does this fit the most? So it all starts with the photo, and then I'll like mock up the head, the animal head, whatever it is. And then I'll draw it in my moleskin. And from my moleskin, I'll scan it, print it to size, to make it as life size as possible. And then paint it and cut it and put it up in the street.
Okay. And then for the work that you do for like gallery shows where it's like watercolor and ballpoint pen on like wood, is it a very similar process as far as how you approach the development of the composition, or is it very different?
Yeah, it's very similar. The only difference is I can't paint messy. Painting wee paste is great because you could color outside the lines like my 2-year-old, So it makes it easier because you're cutting out all the excess. But it's kind of the same process. Paintings are just more intimidating to me. It's weird, right? It's like we always doubt ourselves. I don't know what it is being an artist. We've done something a million times, and then we got to do it again, and we're just like, oh, I have imposter syndrome. I can't do this. You know, but it's kind of like the same process.
Okay. And the choice of watercolor on wood I found particularly interesting because I generally think of watercolor artists using paper. So I'm kind of curious, like, is it more challenging to use watercolor on wood? Have you found that difficult, or do you paint some kind of initial layer on top of the wood so that the watercolor works a little bit easier? Like, what's your experience been like using watercolor on wood?
Oh man, I had like I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. Um, I I got a bunch of watercolors and I was just experimenting with it. And I hate painting on canvas. And I learned a couple tricks here and there by painting your surface with mixed media first, and then painting on top. Kind of like that's your first layer, right? And when I make my paintings, I have these collage backgrounds. So I'll decide on the color that I want the background to mostly be, and I'll just paint that with a layer, and then I'll make a collage, glue it face down, and then sand it. So then the images are still seen that you want. Sometimes you don't know how it's going to work, right? Because you're sanding it. Sometimes you lose parts of the image, but I kind of really like that because it reminds me of life, right? Like you just don't know what you're going to get. Anything could happen tomorrow, you know? So I love like making these collages that are very heartfelt and like tell so much more like deep into the piece, and then to just wash it away and for you to just see little fragments to hopefully be able to put it together. And then after I do that process, I paint it with like a little bit of white and mixed media, and then I go over it with a pencil drawing, and then pen, and then color it in with watercolor.
Okay.
The watercolor was, man, I don't even know really how that came about. I think the one thing I really liked about it was you could fix your mistakes easy, and me not knowing what I'm doing. I found it easy that I could just add a bunch of water to this section and redo it if I don't like how it's coming out. You know? Uh,
Okay.
I,
Interesting.
I don't know.
I always had the opposite impression. I always thought that watercolor was less forgiving, but maybe I mean I'm not an artist, so I.
Yeah, on paper it's less forgiving. On
Oh,
the
okay.
wood, it'll just kind of just stain that area. Like it'll make that area darker,
Okay.
almost like a tone. It tones out that section, but then you could just color it again, and it's forgiving.
Interesting. That's cool. And so I guess you know the process of doing ink and then as like your strong outlines and then painting that in with watercolor. To me, that feels very similar to the way that comic artists will separate the responsibilities of art creation, where you have an inker, or you do the ink separately and then you do the coloring separately. So I'm kind of curious, did that were you inspired by the way that comic book artists create their work, and did that in some way inform how you later created your own paintings?
It could have, because I really have no idea what I'm doing. I think I became a better artist doing the murals. When I was doing the murals, I got to see the way artists painted, seeing how Dope painted, Case McLean, you know, just the countless artists we worked with, Gaia, all these people, seeing their process and how they painted and how they layered things made me be like, oh shit, if I started dark to and then light, or if I started light to dark, you know, things that are probably common sense to people just went over my head. I
Mm.
had no concept. I didn't even know Andy Warhol's work was silkscreened when I was younger. I thought it was painted. I didn't know what silkscreening was. So as I grew up and I started learning all this stuff, it was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, that's probably an easier way to do this, and that's definitely an easier way to do that. And I just kept learning as I went, and And then somehow I got the shit I got now. I don't know.
Awesome. And so, like, for the work that you end up putting up in the streets, the wheat pasting process, I think, is interesting. You're I think the first person that I've talked to that does do wheat paste. So I'm not super familiar with like what that involves. And from what I've heard, just gleaned from this conversation, is a lot of the stuff that you create directly in your studio and then take out, and the part that happens in the street is really the pasting up on the wall, right? So I guess part of what I'm curious about is that paste. Is that something that you create also, or is there just, can you buy just wheat paste? I don't even know. Or do you mix some custom version of what you use to put the stuff up?
Yeah, the first time I ever did it, I bought the powder that you mix with water.
Okay.
And I made a huge batch of it, and oh man, that stuff gets rancid quick. Like, oh, this stuff gets so rancid. And I was like, dude, I don't want to keep making this every time. And I just strolled through Home Depot and I saw wallpaper glue. And I'm like,
Okay.
I'm gluing this on a wall. And I was like, yeah, it costs more. It definitely costs more. But I'm also not just printing my work out and gluing it up. I'm hand painting every image I do.
Right.
So I'm like, you know what? If I'm going to be taking the time, I might as well spend the extra $15 and buy wallpaper glue. And having a job, it's like, if I'm going to be taking my free time and doing this, I just thought, like, let me do it right. Maybe it'll last longer. Maybe it'll be harder to come off. And I was right every single time with those little things that I wasn't aware of either. I just figured, let me just spend this extra money, right? It should be better. And I went about it that way. And I just buy wallpaper glue and use that. And the life of a lot of the pieces I put up, as long as no one tries to mess with it, man, they don't come down. I've had pieces in Jersey City that are still up, that I put up
Really?
7 years ago.
Oh wow.
And because no one's messed with them, because they're like second and third floor of an apartment building, and no one's messed with them. And that was just wallpaper glue. And you got to think about the weather conditions, right? The rain, the snow, the cold, the humidity, all that stuff. And those things are still rocking. So
it's amazing, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you about, is this the ephemeral nature? Because, like, not having had experience with these mediums, to me, it would seem like, I mean, I guess street art and even spray paint is ephemeral in the sense that, they're out in the elements and can be worn away over time. But I kind of would have perceived wheat paste as being even more fragile, or even more potentially, temporary. But from what you're saying, it seems to also last as long. Is that right?
Yeah, it could. A lot of people just use the traditional wheat paste method with the making it from scratch and having it get rancid. They use those methods, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's what do they say? How many ways to skin a cat, right? There's nothing wrong with anyone's approach. I feel like there's so many ways. I heard people use like wood glue. If they're gluing on wood, they'll mix wood glue in their paste. People do all types of funky things, and they prefer it. Me, I can only speak for myself, but I just noticed that wallpaper glue just, lasts longer. So for anyone out there, you want it to last longer, spend a couple extra bucks.
And so I guess, what is your feeling about just the ephemeral nature of the work? I mean, all street art has some amount of temporariness to it. Is that something that you like about that medium, or is it something you regret?
No, I maybe it's my life that I love. I love it that it is temporary. Having that near death experience, even more so. Like, I might not be here tomorrow. Not to sound morbid or whatever, but I might not. I have no idea who's running my simulation. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know what's going on. What God wants from me. I just continue to do me, and it is great to take that photo and hope that someone else gets to appreciate it. You know, you wonder, am I gonna make a little kid's day today? Did someone just, you know, lose a partner? You know, did some guy walking home from the bar, his girlfriend just broke up with him? You know, and they see a dude holding a sign that says, "My ex-wife had a better lawyer," and he gets a good laugh out of it. You know,
Right.
I don't know. I just hope that that's the case. You know, I hope that my art can make people forget the bullshit that they deal with from their day to day that we all deal with. You know, we all have bad days. You know, we all get depressed. So if I could put a smile on someone's face and make them forget for a second, you know, that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Awesome. And so I guess, and I think I probably know what the answer to this question is, but I want to ask it anyway. How do you identify as an artist? Do you identify as a street artist who also creates work for galleries, or do you identify as a gallery artist who also puts work up in the streets?
I think I would definitely say I'm a street artist, even though the term is like, but I would definitely say I'm a street artist. From my love of the street, I've done many illegal things in the street, and I want to continue it. I just want to do the illegal things that ain't gonna wind me in jail, you know. So for me, I would say I'm a street artist who's blessed to have gallery opportunities. You know, I never would have thought I would have ever had a solo show at all, or you know, there's a story I could say, man, in 2008, it just goes to show how crazy this world is. It was like 2008, and I picked up a Juxtaposed magazine, and I was going through it, and I saw an artist, Ikundayo, was having a show at ThinkSpace Gallery. And I saw this, and I was like, holy shit, this artist is amazing. I wish I could know this artist. And I said, damn, if I could show at ThinkSpace, I've made it as an artist. Like literally what I thought. And I remember telling my wife this. And she was like, yeah, all right, whatever. Fast forward, I got to work with Ikundayo, collaborate with Ikundayo, and I've showed with ThinkSpace, I believe 4 times in group shows. And I would have, you know, it was like bucket list things that I didn't think it was even possible, but yet I just continue to work and never thought any of it was possible. And the way this crazy world works, man, like you put out things you want in the universe, and somehow you receive them if you work hard for them.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's actually a really good segue, because I want to talk to you a little bit about your last solo show. You talked a little bit earlier about or you mentioned a little bit earlier the show that you had at Paradigm Gallery in 2021 called Immigrant Mentality. And then you also had a show in 2023 last year at Deep Space Gallery in Jersey City called The Corner. And that predominantly featured paintings on street signs, which, harkens back to what you were telling me earlier about you just taking down street signs in your neighborhood and painting on them, putting them back up. So is that meant to be sort of a tribute to your time living in New Jersey and the neighborhood that you grew up in?
100%. Man, the first show that I did coming up at a bar, Northern Soul in Hoboken, I did this show called Signs of Extinction. And I stole those street signs and I painted animals that were on the verge of extinction, right? And I remember like News 12 covered it, and I was on the cover of some Hoboken newspaper, blah, 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 whatever. And I got a lot of press. But I just loved the concept of everything being on street signs. And I always wanted to circle back to it. And at the time, I was a younger artist. I had no idea, what I was doing. I was painting animals because I enjoyed it. And when I came up with this series, I wanted to circle back so bad to the street signs. I just didn't have, I guess, the timing was never right, And since I put so many pieces up in the street, I think I've done over 300, that a lot of those images are not paintings. So I thought, man, for anyone who's a fan, why not circle back to the street signs and do the images I put up in the street and put them on an object that's in the street, you know, and have that like marriage, you know? So that show was all pieces that I put up in the street at one point or another. And, I put them all on street signs, and it was really cool because I got to collaborate with some close friends that I've made, through the years, which I've never really done for a show. And it's not because it's my platform and I don't want to share it. It's just the opportunity never seemed right. So this time it really worked. So to be able to do those street pieces that I did with them in the street, and to like do them for gallery work, and then them like adding their like details and touches. And
Nice.
one of the homies, El Toro, he added like his like tattoos to his arms that he didn't have in the We Paste
Oh,
that
wow.
I put up in the street. And then same thing with Chris, Robots Will Kill. He kept adding like all these like little tattoos to the robot body, and it was just cool to just sit down, same thing like City Kitty. He just did his thing. And for all artists of the culture to just come together like that, to me, it was one of the most like epic moments, to get us all together. It meant a lot, it really did.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how did you get the street signs for this show? Were they also taken?
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, don't incriminate yourself.
No. Most of them were stolen.
Okay.
Not all of them. Most of them. Most of them. Sorry, government. Most of them. My favorite one, is the Lincoln Tunnel sign. That was my favorite one. My good friend who passed away, we were hammered, like walking back, from a party at like 3 a.m, and the sign was like hanging down
Oh, wow.
by the Lincoln Tunnel. And we were like walking up this hill, and we turn around like, where is this dude? And we just see him like holding this massive sign. And we're like, bro, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing? He's like, nah, bro, come on, man, help me bring them. We're like, you're on your own. And he like trekked that whole entire shit to his house. We walked like 8 blocks.
Wow.
Him holding that sign. No cop stopped us. It was nuts. So, I had to hit up his sister and be like, I need that sign if you still have it. And she did. And that was awesome to be able to do a piece on that.
That's amazing. And similar to the Immigrant Mentality show, this show, The Corner, also had an installation. Is that something that you generally like to do for your gallery shows? Is to also have some kind of an installation component?
Oh, definitely. I feel like it gives me the opportunity to get out of my comfort zone, to experiment. I love experimenting. And I feel like a lot of artists, maybe it's just me, but I feel like we do get pigeonholed, and we're constantly doing, what we're used to. And when we collaborate with others and when we get to experiment, we break out of our comfort zone, and it teaches us so much, it teaches us techniques and ways to do things. And it makes our art better, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, and maybe it just makes my art better. But I love being able to create something big, and like kind of like I guess you could say almost like a statement, like
Sure.
you tie everything together. So for the corner to be able to like almost make a street scene, and I remember like I thought about it. And I was just like, oh, I'm just going to hit up a couple of the homies. And this is what I did. I'm in Jersey City. I know some people who live out there who are graph writers. And I reached out. One of them was able to come literally the day I was installing.
Nice.
Threw up a tag, because like I said, I'm a toy. I'm not doing no fake graffiti letters. I could draw it if someone already did it, but then it's just like, But that was cool, and then like, I had this street sign. added a couple stickers to it, and I knew whoever like went there would understand the assignment, you know? And that sign is now loaded with stickers, top to bottom, left to right, tags on the back of it. You know, the pole started getting tagged. Like it was like, yes, this is what it's about, you know?
These are my people.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, they get it. They get it.
That's really cool. So let's talk about what you have coming up. What has been your main focus lately, and what's the rest of 2024 look like for you?
Oh, 2024. So I think my goal is just to murder the street this year. I'm really gonna go hard in the street. I didn't really get the opportunity last year. I got to work with mural arts last year, which was an awesome experience to be able to work with, you know, such a major figure in murals. And I did a 32 window installation on a building, and that was just a wild ride. You know, having a 1-year-old at the time, a full-time job, and 55 days to do all that work was insane.
Yeah.
I got it done, and I then focused on the solo show, and I kind of needed a break from the street, to step back and see what was going on, who are the up and coming artists, you know, who's trying to get their feet wet, see like what's happening in the culture. And now I got a bunch of ideas. I want to bring back the clone series that I do in Philadelphia, so I want to do another 9 people.
Nice.
That number loves to haunt me. So I want to do another 9 people that I feel like are important to me in Philadelphia, and just do a couple other collaborations and fun pieces in the street. That being said, after the summer, I gotta prepare for my solo show next year.
Very cool.
Yeah, April 2025. I have a solo show at Paradigm. It's gonna be titled Storyteller, and I'm kind of taking a little look from the lens of the great American storyteller Norman Rockwell, and using my crazy stories that I've experienced in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, growing up, and things I've seen with my own eyes, and try to make paintings based off that stuff. So I got a lot of work ahead of me. So I'll start taking photos probably in the next couple of weeks when I figure out like what images I want to create. I'll try to like get a lot of friends together and stuff, and start setting together photo shoots, and you know, putting them in 90s attire and everything like that to get that feel. And from there, just continue to work on, you know, putting up stuff in the street, painting stuff for the street, and then probably buckled up in like September, October. And I plan to make 21 paintings for the show. So I'm excited. 9 of them are, damn number, 9 of them are going to be like still lifes, which I've experienced with in my last Paradigm show. And I really want to tackle that again. I had a lot of fun making those. So they'll be like illustrated still lifes. And then the other paintings, one of them is part of the installation that I plan on making. And the other ones will either be on wood panels or moleskin books.
Nice.
Yeah.
So good variety. And then you said you're also going to have an installation for this one. Do you already know what you're going to do for it?
Yeah, I kind of. It might be a little bit more simpler. It's definitely going to be like a woodcut. I'm thinking since I'm kind of doing things through the lens of Norman Rockwell, I was thinking maybe try to make it more like his Saturday Evening Post. You know, that's where my mind's going. We'll see. Anything could change. You know, it's mostly what the boss says is good or bad, and by the boss I mean my wife, the general. You know, without her, I'll probably be a crappy artist. You know, you need that person to give you that input, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so just to recap, you said the show's going to be called Storyteller, and it's
Storyteller. Yeah. And
about a year from now, right? So
yeah,
like
April 4th, 2025. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, like, where can people keep up with that to be informed about the latest as that show develops?
Oh yeah, word. I guess Sean Nine Lugo on everything, whatever tickles your fancy.
And you mentioned a couple times that the number 9 haunts you, and out of
Yeah,
pure coincidence, this episode is episode 90, which was not planned. I did not plan that at all.
I
It just
love it.
happened to be that way. But do you have a quick, or maybe even not so quick, reason as to why that 9 has been a
Uh,
part of your name and identity?
so like I've mentioned throughout this interview, I had a good friend who passed away. The story sounds off good, but doesn't end good. But we were we were tripping hard on acid, and the Beatles number 9 came on. Number 9, number 9. I don't know how many times they say that, but it like brainwashed us. And I had a marker in my pocket, and I just started writing 9 on everything that day. And then the next day, and the next day, and anytime I had a marker in my pocket, I was writing the number 9. Like I would either write 9 or nueve or write the numbers. It was just crazy. And a couple weeks later, we're hanging out, and my good friend TJ says 9 watches over us. And I said, "What, my guy?" He's like, "Yeah, 9 watches over us. Right, 9 watches over us." I said, "Okay, sure." Months later, he fell 9 stories to his death. So the number 9 is my way of keeping his memory alive. So it's the 9's just for him, you know. I felt like that was such a weird statement to make. The way he passed away was crazy. You know, we still don't know exactly what happened. And yeah, to keep his legacy alive, I was just like, oh, I just gotta make this in my name, you know?
Yeah. No, that's amazing to kind of commit to that for so long, and all in the spirit of paying homage to your friend. That's cool.
Oh yeah, you know, you gotta keep people alive. It's important.
And so, speaking of paying homage to people, I always like to close out the show with one question, which is, who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh man, you know, listening to so many of your podcasts, I should be more prepared for this. I think it's hard to say one. I don't want to be that guy and like shoots off a list of 100 people, but it's hard to say one. I believe in threes, so
because 3 times 3 happens to be 9, by the way.
yeah, you know, just look, bro. Like I said, it just curses. It's a curse. I would love to, and this is all based on conversations I've had with people that I've really enjoyed, and you give hella interviews, man. So
appreciate that.
It'll be amazing to hear you talk to like Andrew Hem. Oh God, that's a solid dude. Case McLean. I would love to hear you talk to Case. And someone who knows so much about the culture of New York and the history of graffiti and has done so much for the culture, man. Like Chris, Robots Will Kill.
Nice.
Man, he's one of the most nicest people I've ever met in this art game. But that's 3. I'll do 3. I'll do 3. And if anyone's mad that I didn't say their name, I'm sorry.
Yeah, blame it on me. I'm the one that asked for 1. So awesome. Well, Sean, thanks so much for coming on and chatting with me today. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man. This is awesome, man. I've been a fan since episode number 2 with Jeremy Hush, man. So this is epic for me, man. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sean. Something actually occurred to me while Sean was describing one of the purposes of using animal heads or teddy bears as the heads of his figures, and how it was to serve as sort of a mask. He said that he'd rather do that than paint actual human faces because As soon as you paint a human face, the audience immediately relates the specific characteristics of that face with meaning in their own life. Maybe it looks like someone they know, or they're projecting the identity of people in their own lives to the art when, that wasn't really the intent. So painting an animal head removes that innate bias. That conversation and his mention of that reminded me of something that Brian Mashburn was talking about in our chat way back in episode 16. If I recall correctly, he said something very similar about why he uses animals to tell human stories. Or at least one of the motivations for doing that, and how it removes the bias that the viewer might bring to the table to give a greater focus to the story that he's telling. And I feel I've talked with a couple of others about this very thing as well. So it was interesting to see those kind of similar sentiments and how each artist addressed that in their own way. It sounds like Sean has a pretty full year already mapped out. For the near term, it sounds like he's aiming to hit the streets harder than he's been able to in the last year. So if you're in the Philly area, I suspect you'll be seeing a lot of new work from him in the coming months. And then towards the end of the year, he'll be starting to build a new body of work for his next solo show at Paradigm Gallery. Titled Storyteller, the current plan is to have 21 new paintings with various mediums and sizes, and then also to have an installation at the gallery as well, just like his last two solo shows had. It'll all be happening next April in Philadelphia at Paradigm Gallery. Be sure to follow Sean's and the gallery's Instagram to keep up to date with everything. So thanks again to Sean for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.
Number nine, 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 number